You ready? It's a couple minutes past 5 and we do have a quorum present, so we'll go ahead and call this Santa Clara City Council work meeting to order. Appreciate everybody being here. I'm Mayor Rick Rosenberg. We have present from the council tonight, Councilman Ben Shakespeare, Councilwoman Lena Mathis, and Councilwoman Krista Hinton. I think Jared asked to be excused and Councilman Drake showed up just in the nick of time. So appreciate everybody being here. Welcome everyone in the audience. Welcome, Mari. It's always a pleasure to have you here with us. We appreciate your input. So go ahead and jump into the working agenda. Item 2A, general business, is a parks fee discussion. Bradley, I'm assuming you're going to lead this one, or Brock?
Brad will be leading this discussion.
Good evening. It's good to see all of you today. Could you bring up the cemetery fee comparison chart, please? That's a different color one than I have, but yeah, that's not the most up-to-date one. That's not the current one.
Well, it's what was submitted.
It's a different color, but I might have sent the wrong one in, but I can go through it anyway. So this is the 2018 cemetery increase that we had, and we did a fee comparison in this month in 2022 for plots and expenses with the cemetery. Can I just make a copy of that, Brock, real quick, and just pass it out?
Yeah,
That way they've got the current.
have somebody going, somebody can, Scott or
Scan it. Scan it.
what's your head? Just waiting for you.
I'll go ahead and get started while we're waiting. So our full plot fees for residents, they're currently $300. That's just to buy the plot. And we compared St. George. St. George is $450. Washington is $500, and Ivins is $300. So what we were proposing is that we raise our lot fee to match St. George at $450. And the reason that we're bringing this, I can talk about it a little bit. The reason we're bringing the plot fee schedule in is because our cemetery is filling up really quick, and we've sold a lot of plots. And I think we're about 4 years out from running out of plots altogether. So in that new section that we just built in 2009. So with the increase in expenses and with the limited plots that we have, we were going to target mostly the non-resident fees to try to discourage and try to slow that sales down until we can come up with a new solution for that. So currently the resident is $300, but the proposed is $450 for the resident. But we hadn't raised the fees in 2018, like the older one we're looking up there. We did not raise that last time we talked about it. We kept it the same when we raised the non-resident rate. So I believe it's been 10 years since we raised the resident rate per resident plot. Thank you, Scott. Okay, on perpetual care for residents, it's currently at $300. We were going to match St. George at $450. So when you come in and you buy a plot, you buy the plot and the perpetual care. So that cost when you initially come in to buy it would go from $600 to $900. And if you compare that with the other cities, Washington is $500, but they don't charge a perpetual care fee. So we're actually the same as St. George, but we're more than Washington and Ivins by a little bit on Ivins. Perpetual care is $300. It'll go to $450. St. George is also $450. And then if you step down to the next row, it goes to full plots. Non-resident is currently $850. We're going to raise that to $1,000. Perpetual care is $400. We were going to raise that to $650. So if somebody were a non-resident coming in to buy a single plot, it would be $1,650. And then we go into half plots. They'll also go up. And perpetual care would be $300 for half plot. And you can see the resident and the non-residents are a little bit higher. Interment fees, a weekday, we went from $300 to $400. We're actually in the middle on that. St. George is 500, Washington's 400, and Ivans is 250. Internment fee, non-resident is 550. We're going to go to 650. And then Saturday, of course, is more, and that's to cover the overtime that we have. And if we have to bring out extra people, sometimes we have to replace monuments, especially in the old section, we might have to move 3 or 4 monuments. If we bring out a second person on the weekend to replace those monuments, it takes more than one person to do that. Weekday burials for infant or cremation is 300. And weekend Saturdays 350. And if we have to move a monument, in other words, if we have to call out Kenworthy, for example, for the crane, sometimes the monuments are too big for us to move, so we have to call out a crane, and that's a $250 charge. And that's just what our cost is to have them come out and do that. So are there any questions about the fee increase or?
So the last one, late arrival fee, is that some of them haven't shown up?
That's when you're late for your own funeral? I don't know. We do have occasional problems, and that St. George charges that, but we have had people that don't show up till after dark, and
When my name's announced, don't worry, I'll be there.
so I do feel a little bit bad raising it for residents a little bit higher, but I feel that since we didn't raise it last time, it would be okay to go ahead and do it this time to 900 for the perpetual and the resident lots.
Questions for Brad, council? Is this going to be, I'm assuming this will come to the next city council meeting?
That's correct.
So you'll have a run this week. Be a run on Paul.
Yeah, so we'll bring next week an item to set the public hearing, and then we'll have a public hearing on February 23rd.
I think it's overdue.
Okay. I think the increase in the non-resident rates, we get a lot of people that come in. And if they think they're getting a better deal or something like that, they may come here instead of, being buried in Las Vegas or California. We've had a few cases where they do that just because it's cheaper. Okay, on the city facilities fees, what we would do on that is just add the Swiss Pioneer Memorial Park. And I don't have the handout for that. It's in the works right now, but I'll bring that back to the next council meeting. So what we want to do is add Swiss Pioneer Memorial Park in there, and then a couple of minor increases. And I'll send that out with the packet when it goes out Thursday.
This is like for rental of the pavilion stuff. like
Yes,
that.
yeah, just other fees that we have. We have a lot of them, but we're not touching baseball, diamond fees or anything like that. Adding Swiss Pioneer Memorial Park, and I think Sherelle wanted to add something that Washington does, and it's if they have a wedding at parks, there would be an additional charge for that. Some people like at Swiss Pioneer Park, they like to rent the pavilion at the $20 for resident rate, and then they hold an entire wedding there. And it doesn't really work for our parks crew because it's a lot more work for them to come in and clean it up and stuff. So she was wanting to add a little bit more for those kind of things that go on at the parks.
Brad, back on the cemetery there on the plots, we'd talked, you've got room to expand out to the west there, don't you, or down the road a little bit, or is that a
I
possibility?
probably need to talk with an engineer about that, but there is room, but there would be maybe some issues with water and things like that out there. But I could get 1,000. I believe I could get 1,000 more plots on the west side of that existing old cemetery.
The only reason I asked that is it was brought up when we were up there about it, taking that rock wall that's been built there and extending it to where it faces the highway there, and then, raising that and then basically extending that little area, that area there. It's actually a pretty big area, but again, there is water and but it would provide a pretty good area if it
Yeah,
was.
the parking area has a drain that comes out right below the Veterans Monument that's there that just goes under the trail and it just is open. So we'd have to do a couple of changes and
Yeah.
have to figure out what we'll do instead of grass, there. That's possible. I don't know if we'll be able to do grass, but
Artificial turf, is that a possibility? Just kidding.
You could probably resell the plots after they slide down the hill. You'd have room to resell it.
Well, it would just expand, it'd go from 1,000 to start with, and we'd have 1,500 in 10 years.
We could take the wall out there and build it out of concrete funeral vaults. Fill them as we go up. All
It was-
kinds of options.
It was
Yeah.
like I said, I know we're not too far out, and that was a question, again, outside of the water and all that, but a way to maybe enhance that visually from the road, but also if it would work, but
Yeah, we'd want to spend a little time and energy looking at that.
yeah.
all
For
I've done
sure.
is initially measured it off and came up with a number of plots that I could get in there, but I haven't, there's no soils tests or anything like that have been done yet.
Yeah.
But we do, if we want to continue to offer burials in Santa Clara, we do need to look at somewhere else to go. And we're also looking at some options for cremation vaults and things like that are above the ground, maybe a area, cremation garden. So people that choose to do cremation could use the vault instead of taking up an existing plot. And we do allow 2 cremations per plot, to try to reduce that. But still takes up space.
Okay, thank you, Bradley. Any other questions?
I apologize for not having the right attachment in there.
You're good. It's a work meeting, man.
Okay.
Low pressure.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Okay, item number 82, the PC stipend and 2 meetings a month discussion. Jim's heading to the mic. I'm assuming he's the
I
man.
have comments.
I'm sure you do.
Thanks, Mayor, and good evening, everyone. We wanted to have a discussion with you about some changes to Planning Commission, some of the things that we feel are necessary and needed as we start reviewing more and more projects, and with the uptick and all the development activity in the area, which you're all aware of, we feel that some changes are needed. And so first of which would be moving to 2 Planning Commission meetings each month. The meetings would be scheduled for the 2nd and 4th Thursday of each month. Currently, the PC meets on that 2nd Thursday. And there would be months during holiday months, such as July, November, and December, where we would have 1 month, because 1 meeting per month, because it's likely the 2nd meeting would fall on a holiday or be close to it. And then there could be occasion in the summertime or other times where a 2nd meeting is not needed. But we want to have the option to have that meeting as needed. I did have a list that I created a little bit ago, and I wanted to give you each a copy. I made copies but forgot to hand them down. It's just giving you kind of an idea of some of the things we have in the works. And so this is just residential, but we have quite a bit going on in the community right now. You're all familiar with Black Desert. We're starting to work with Regal Homes, who's been here recently, who's looking to make their submittal to us here in the next week or 2. The Pointed Entrada and the Pointed Entrada Assisted Living, but that project is 160 units. We've got the single family homes. We've got the assisted living facility, and then we also have some townhomes or some, cottages for people that need care to locate in prior to moving into the full assisted living facility. Quail Crossing at Desert Edge, that's the Robert Smith project. They've actually made their preliminary plat submittal and they're coming to their second TRC tomorrow. So that's a very, comprehensive project. We have a bit going on there with the townhomes to the north and the apartments to the south and the affordable housing tax credits, which he was chosen for. Regal Homes, you've all seen, that number would be deducted from the Black Desert community. Silverado, we've had a lot of discussions with the Silverado group and they're working on their plans. And that includes 4 different portions of development, including 124 units. You'll recall that they have the she sheds or hobby places as well as the apartments. So 124 units there. Solus is getting going. I had a couple come in today asking about it because they live right next door to it. And they were asking what's going on over there. So Solus is coming real quick with Sullivan Homes. The edge at Grand Desert, that's been sitting for a while, but we're getting a lot of calls. We're getting a lot of calls because part of the property's for sale right now. And part of it's not, but it's part of a development agreement and the 2 property owners will have to work together to allow for access and for something to occur there. But one of the developers that owns property there, his holdings, he may be looking to sell. So we've had a lot of activity there. Vineyard Phase 11, and the Hills at Santa Clara Phase 3, we still just, have 1 home under construction at this point. The other thing is Matt and I and other city staff, we're working on a lot of code updates, which you guys have been seeing that we've been bringing to you. We're going to talk about the water efficient landscaping and conservation ordinance tonight. We've recently brought the ADU to you, the IADU, the walls and fences. Recently, we had a little bit of a discussion relative to development in the PDR and PDC zones. We want to take those out and make them separate zones rather than all being in one chapter to avoid confusion because they are different. The subdivision ordinance, we've been talking about our subdivision ordinance, chapter 16. It's dated and needs a rewrite, and there's a lot involved with redoing that. We're going to be working on a sign code rewrite. We talked about water efficiency. We need to rewrite our definitions chapter because there's a lot of things that are missing. And the conditional use permit chapter could use an update as well. And those are just highlights. Really, we're looking at the entire chapter 17. A lot of that needs to be redone. So that's part 1, feeling that we need to go to 2 meetings per month. It's likely we would have 18 meetings a year rather than the 12 we have right now, because on occasion there could be holiday months or other months that we don't need a second meeting, but we want that option. Part 2 of that is potentially having compensation or a stipend for planning commission members. The typical compensation range is between $25 to $50 per meeting attended. Payment would be made to planning commission members quarterly for meetings attended. No compensation would be provided for unattended meetings. So we did have a discussion with the Planning Commission on January 13th about some of these ideas as a discussion item. We did have a member that was not in favor of having 2 meetings a month, but the other 4 seemed like it made good sense and kind of helps with processing projects and being user friendly and more customer service oriented with the development community. And then the stipend, most members were fine with receiving a stipend. We had one say that they didn't want a stipend. The other one said, well, I may or may not, but we should have it. I can donate it back to the city if I choose not to use it. Where other members said a stipend would be fine with me. So those are the 2 parts that make up what we're proposing here. And we just wanted to share this with the city council. The mayor and Brock and I and Matt have talked about this a little bit the past couple months, some needed changes and some things that we need to do here for our community moving forward. So with that, let's open it up to discussion.
Thanks, Jim. Questions, council?
As far as the training, some of the training that they're going through, some of the meetings and
Right.
that we want them going to, would that would, I assume that would, and yeah, as far as a stipend would be a meeting. Obviously, that's something we want them to go to, and
That's our meeting, our planning commission meeting for meetings attended. If they go to the league training or we send them to an APA training, we wouldn't pay them for that. You know, we pay for the registration and for a hotel stay if needed and the training, the registration, but not for meetings. This is for our planning commission meetings here in the city hall building
okay.
for meetings attended.
I didn't know if those would be considered the same, another meeting
Right.
compensation for those.
Well, I mean, I guess that's something we could talk about, but generally it's been my experience is just for the planning commission meetings themselves. And if we choose to do this, we would send them a quarterly disbursement every 3 months. They would get a check for meetings attended.
Okay.
The training would be required of the planning commission in accordance with
Right.
the state law. So they'd have to attend the training in order to be on the commission and to get the stipend for attending meetings. And so
And this allows for us to do training as well. So we're, Matt and I are working on some things to do some training with the planning commission. And we have been, discussing some things in our work meetings and discussion items, but it will give us opportunity to do some training during the course of the year here, and as well as other training opportunities that become available.
Okay. And most of these projects on here, I started to mark, most of these have been approved, haven't they? I mean,
Well,
Trail,
they're in different stages of approval. There are some, and I didn't have time to give you an updated just to zoom down, and that's why I talked about certain ones.
okay.
And I remember that I said I would bring something and then I forgot to do it until late this afternoon. But, Quail Crossing is something that, is going to take some time. Pointed Entrada, those projects still require final approval. Regal Homes still requires its approval. Silverado doesn't have any entitlement. They have to do rezoning and approvals. The Edge of Grand Desert, there's a lot with that. There would be full-on approvals with that and any project in Black Desert for that matter. Some of the others you see are different stages of approval, like we've issued some permits and other permits we haven't. Some of them have preliminary approval. Some of them still need final approval. It's mixed. This is just all I had available.
Okay.
So, but, when you talk about a project like Silverado, there's a lot involved in that. Quail Crossing, there's a lot involved in that. Black Desert and Edge of Grand Desert, these are complicated projects. And we have commercial projects coming to us soon as well. So,
Yeah, I mean, these would be basically maybe an 18-month span. These would be projects that, and then some commercial as well. That would
Yes.
be-
Right. Because, when we're talking about Silverado, they want to do retail pads and a convenience store. And then they want to do the chicken and pickle or something similar to that, as well as the pickleball facilities. So the whole frontage part, the two out of 4 parts of that project are commercial. So.
Okay,
You're
I'll give you my
Elena.
thoughts. Having come from planning, I'm surprised you're not sharing. Having coming from the planning commission world. I think the stipend, and this is just my personal opinion, it's small enough that it doesn't really mean a lot.
okay.
That being said, as a planning commissioner, I liked the fact that we didn't receive any compensation because it was regular in a meeting that we were told that we were in the pockets of the city or the developers. That was a common comment that we
Okay.
received. So I liked being able to say, we are volunteers. We don't get paid. It's an invalid comment. So given the small dollar amount, my preference would be not to have a stipend. As far as number of meetings, I think a lot of them are okay with saying they'll be to a second meeting.
Mhm.
My opinion is you won't get all of them to come to a second meeting.
Okay.
We've had issues with that over even this last year where several meetings had to be rescheduled because they didn't have a quorum. because they were going to be out of town or whatever the conflicts were. So if you were going to go to 2 meetings, I would also change when you make the change to this, I would also make an adjustment in there that there's a requirement that they have to attend so many meetings in order to continue as a planning commissioner,
Okay.
so that it becomes a focus and they understand that it's important and you're committing to be there. It doesn't have to be 100%, but
So a percentage.
because I just don't think, I think what'll happen is what's gone on before. I think you'll end up having some that are really committed and they'll do their best they can to schedule around it. And I think you'll have others that if something comes up, they know that there's, 2 other people that can be gone and still have a quorum and they won't attend,
Okay.
is my opinion. Just
So
my,
maybe it's a yearly count. Maybe it's 75% attendance. I don't know over the course of the
Something.
year. Okay.
Just on that, you had mentioned 18, maybe 18 total meetings. So the 2 it sounds like during the summer, sounds like your second meeting.
Well,
Lakes.
right. I was just based on my experience. Most cities do 2 planning commission meetings a month. So up to 24 a year, but you get into November and December and July with the 2 holidays and camps and everything else. Those are tough months. And there's always a few months. So on average, it seems to be about 18 to 20 meetings a year, probably closer to that 18 number. There's not always going to be 2 meetings every month, but there's going to be occasions where we need 2 meetings every month, because things are picking up.
Yeah.
So,
I guess my other thought would be is if we're going to say there's going to be 2 meetings from the developer side of things, that we better do our best to make sure if we're going to state that, then there needs to be the ability to have 2 meetings. So
Sure.
you
Yeah.
may not have a full meeting on one particular Thursday because you only have 1 item from 1 developer, which theoretically, I guess you could say, well, it's only 1 item, so we're going to pass you to the next meeting. My opinion is if we're going to state there's 2 meetings and you only have one
right.
item, you better have the 1 item.
Oh, yeah. We would do the meeting for 1 item and then we'd probably have a discussion or some training afterwards
Okay.
to make the most of it. But if we don't have any items, we wouldn't have a meeting. But for the most part, yes, we can do the 2 meetings a month. It's just those holiday months are a little more difficult. And a lot of times the developers we work with, they agree because they're going on trips and doing other things on those months as well. So,
Well, it would be easy to just schedule that. Hey, we're not going to have a December meeting.
Right.
We're not going to have a November meeting. We're not going to have a June, July, and
right.
but
You have to notice it.
you would
anyway,
know,
so-
you would notice,
Yeah.
but then it gets into the calendar that, hey,
But we can do a
January
yearly
through
calendar,
May,
just like council.
we're having meetings.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, let me add, if I can, one thing that in my discussion with Jim also brought this along is from the planning commissioners themselves is one of the things they requested and wanted is being able to discuss items sometimes before it came to be an action item. The very first time they see it, they've got to make a decision. And this is the way we figured also was a way to be able to do that, to provide that opportunity to say, hey, we can bring it and you can have a discussion. You can understand a lot more about it, have some time to think, and then come back the next one and make a decision on it rather than let's hear it and in 20 minutes you got to decide what you want to do. So it kind of came from a little bit of request from the planning commissioners themselves.
And that's a good point, Brock. Thank you. I have had multiple planning commissioners tell me, thank you for bringing this and having discussion items with us before we're asked to have a public hearing and amend our code. And in some instances, we've had 1 and 2 discussions on potential code amendments before we're asking them to vote. So they like that opportunity. So.
Anybody else? I enjoyed my service on the planning commission and I learned a ton and if I hadn't been asked to serve on the planning commission, I probably wouldn't be in this seat tonight. That gave me exposed me to something that I found that I kind of enjoyed. The $50 a meeting thing, I know that if you look around the state, and even our area, most planning commissioners do get a stipend. to help defray some of the costs that they do. I mean, $50 a meeting is still being a volunteer in my mind. I like the idea of 2 meetings a month, and I think that can help, development. It can maybe smooth out some of the issues. I like the idea of having the vote on a different meeting than the public hearings to allow some time for some consideration. I worry a little bit about you have a public hearing with one group, and then the next week, some of those guys are gone and you got a bunch of guys there that weren't there. And so I'm a little concerned with that. I really think we need to pay a lot of attention to the quality of the planning commissioners and really get a commitment that they're going to be there. Let them know that it's important, and make the language on when they can be disqualified as a commissioner fairly clear so they understand that. And it doesn't turn into the city council having to decide, well, do we get rid of him or her and replace them? That they can be removed relatively easily if they're for cause. So they understand that. But Danny, you were a planning commission chairman too. Any comments?
Well, I see no problems with the compensation at all. I understand what Lena was saying too, that it does feel good to say you're a volunteer and that you have no obligation to anyone. But in this particular case, the compensation stipend is not a significant amount of money. But it may give them more commitment to be there. Not a lot, but a little bit. And so I think that could work very well. I like the idea of the presentation in one meeting and the vote in the other. And it'll increase your transparency because some people will hear about it and then come to the next meeting when the action's going to take place. So
Right.
to me, it's a positive thing. And I'm in favor of both.
And I think that was some of our discussion in the thought process, that if we had a small stipend or compensation, it could increase attendance and have commissioners that are a little more dedicated to what they're doing. And we could have a few that decide they don't want to serve at this point because the commitment is more, and we get a couple new planning commissioners. We have Marv Wilson moving on after his last meeting will be next week. And so we'll be replacing him with someone, but we could have one or two others that decide that they've served their time as well. Not that we're looking for anybody to leave, but that could happen.
Okay. Any other comments, council? Get the information you need, Jim?
I think so. Is the consensus a stipend of some amount, or the compensation? I heard a couple different opinions on that. So I don't know that we need a vote, but we can just move forward with that.
I don't
Okay.
have a problem with it.
Okay.
I know what Lena is saying, and I get that.
Well, and
I
I'm
get
okay.
people asking me,
Yeah.
power rates. Well, there goes you. I'm sure we've all heard about it. And my answer to them is, you want to complain, you need to be on the doorstep of Congress
Right.
asking why they're shutting down all our cheap energy. I said,
Right.
don't wait till we have to raise rates to complain about it.
Right.
So, so I have the same answer when people say you're in the pocket of the
And
city.
Lena, I've heard
It's
that
like-
too, and it's ridiculous for the
You're-
amount of time people come and spend there. If they're there till 10 or 11 at night and they're getting $25 to $50, come on.
The
You can make more than that out of-
more than welcome
And
to
I'm
come
okay,
sit up here.
I'm okay with it. I was just pointing out that
Yeah,
that's what you hear. And so it was always nice to be able to, at least for me, it was
Yeah.
nice to be able to say,
yeah.
sorry.
When you get the old.
So if I hear that, I'll ask them to sit down or move on to the next
Right.
item
least-
you're discussing.
At least at $50, they won't have the excuse of,
Yeah.
I didn't have gas in my car. You can at least get here. So.
Yeah, that would be tough. one said, well, my wife's put up with this. We could go out and have dinner and a movie once in a while and do
There you
something
go.
for the time served. So, yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
Okay, item number 2A3, pending water efficient landscaping conservation ordinance discussion. Jim?
Yeah, I'm going to start us off on this. I want the council and mayor, I want to recognize Mari, and I'm going to get this right. Stacy, not Tracy, sorry about that, from Southern Utah Home Builders Association are here to join in our discussion tonight. Stacy attended our meeting on January 13th and provided some good perspective with the Planning Commission during our most previous discussion with them on this subject. At that point, we didn't have a draft as complete as the draft that we have now. The council, I know council members are aware of this. There has been some meetings. I believe there's a meeting either in November or December regarding the ordinance, and a number of you had a chance to go. Since that time, we've been working, communities in Washington County, including us, have been working with the Water Conservancy District on this. We received a model ordinance or a draft in late November, right around Thanksgiving time. Since that time, we've put a committee together that's been meeting pretty much weekly, if not weekly, every other week, whenever we hear updates, trying to have our finger on the pulse of what's going on, because it seems to be a lot of changes occurring. But there is one thing in common that each community has. It's vital that we get something on the books to preserve the water. It's become a statewide issue. We're hearing about it, on the news weekly in the newspapers. Our representatives have been discussing it, and I'm sure they're looking at more legislation this year, but it is a big thing right now. This is a big discussion point statewide. There's different perspectives. A lot of people are good with conserving. If it doesn't allow for too much development to occur, others understand that conservation is good, that we should be conserving, that we shouldn't be just watering lawn and watering sod and putting all that culinary water on our yard when we could be preserving. And I think that's why, especially down here in Washington County, we see a lot of the xeriscape, and that's XERI. Scape, not zero. I hear zero a lot. To me, zero means nothing, just weeds and desert. It's xera. There's a lot of that. We see that desert landscaping. We see the rock. We see the mulch. We see the drip to individual plants and limited sod areas. And that's what this is promoting. The limited sod areas and areas where people will water in their yard. And it addresses multifamily, single family, multifamily and commercial development. And so just for a minute, if we can pull the ordinance up itself, I think we have the draft. And we don't need to, the adopting ordinance is something that we've looked at for our community. And we're fine with that, but we don't need to discuss that right now. What I wanted to talk about is just the ordinance itself. It's pretty clean. We have the applicability. We've added some language there. I don't know if this copy shows the green or the changes, but that's okay. It just seems to be a clean draft, which is perfectly fine. But we have the applicability, and then we have definitions, and there's a lot of definitions here for this type of use. And it's something that city staff has to become educated on. We're all learning. We're all working on this together. So we have the understanding and know-how to review these. We did add a definition for landscape designer. That's for us. We added that in here, and then we added a definition of multifamily and because we have single family as well. And then, sorry, we added or clarified on the definition of multifamily, what that is. And then we have a definition of single family. We all understand that on the next page. And then we have an example of two family. And the reason we did that is we're looking to make this a little bit more understandable and easier to read for those that aren't in this, as a profession in the development game. But if you go to 1792-030, and I believe that's on page 6, the pages are listed on the very bottom, I hope so. If not, it's 1792-030. This now says single family and two family residential water efficiency standards. We've taken multifamily and put it in with the commercial standards because it just makes good sense. And we can speak to that. I just want to go through this. We'll look at a tool we've created and then give the home builders a chance. And this is something we can ask questions on later on if needed. But the two family residential development, which is, a twin home or a side by side. Multifamily is more like Desert Village, where we have townhomes, 4-plex, 6-plex, 8-plex configuration, Heritage Point. And so we have item A1 here says new single family or two family dwellings, including accessory dwelling units having at least 1,000 square feet of living space must have installed a hot water recirculation system or systems, unless hot water delivery can be demonstrated to occur without first displacing more than 0.06 gallons of system water. So that is our tweak to that particular section or component in this part of the code. If we go to the next page, item B under landscape standards, you can see that we do have a provision in there. It says for all new residential construction and development subject to this section, but we have a section that says except where landscaping will be irrigated solely with a private non-municipal water source. Otherwise, landscaping must meet the following requirements. So we know that folks in our community have access to irrigation water or secondary water that's not part of the city's system. So if they have that, there's different options for them. Going down to item number 1, new item number 1, this is where we've had a bit of discussion. Some of the other communities have gone with just a number based on lot size. Like you can only have 750 square feet of total lawn area front and back. We decided to be a little more flexible and go with percentages. So what we're saying is the landscape area must not exceed 20% of the lot square footage, but the lawn area must not exceed 10% of the lot square footage. So basically you could have 10% of your area and lawn and 10%, dripped in irrigation with water. So in the case of an R110 lot, that's going to give you 2,000 square feet, of which 1,000 could be lawn and a total of 2,000 square feet can be in landscaped area. Now, and then we put a cap on this of a maximum of 5,000 square feet because we know we do have some lots that are larger, an acre or larger in size. I know vineyard, those will be half acres. I think that might be a private secondary system with that one. But recently, in the last few days, we've been looking at these percentages, and it's something that we need to discuss a little bit with the council members, with you tonight. We're wondering if we should go down a little bit less on those percentages because the number we've heard, and it's kind of varied, the Water Conservancy District was saying 18%. But then we heard maybe that changed to 16%. But here we're saying up to 20%. So what's the best? Do we go with 8% lawn area for a total of 18%? Or do we go with 8% lawn area with a total of 16%? And maybe we can hear from the Home Builders Association on that and get a little more feedback on what the Conservancy District's intent is. And the reason we're thinking that is because from what we've been told, is right now the water use is at 0.89 and we're trying to get to 0.78 with these changes for this water efficient landscaping and conservation countywide. And then there's a 2-year period. I don't know if it's a testing period or what that period is, where the results are shared with the state engineer's office. And then they determine if we can go down to the ultimate number, the ultimate goal of 0.55. Per residential use or per unit. If we get there, that would allow for more units to be built, over the next number of years or decades, countywide. So, I don't know if we'll get there. I don't know, but we're at one number right now. This is getting us to another number. Perhaps we could get to 0.55. Maybe it's 0.60. I do not know. What I can tell you is up north, a lot of communities are partners with the Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District. And there's projects that are at the 0.55 in different communities because they've agreed to these water efficiency standards and they've put caps on the water amounts, both in the house and outside. So there are projects that are developing to that standard, which is a stringent standard, but we'll see if we get there. Let's see. We did have discussions previously about removal of the pool requirement. Some communities are going with the pool, counting towards some of the landscape or lawn area. We don't feel that that's needed or necessary. We feel we're being pretty restrictive with the lawn areas. We don't know that we need to count the pool towards that percentage. The other thing was requiring pool covers. That's tough in the summer months, requiring that to be covered all the time because no one wants to swim in a 98-degree pool. So that's an issue too. And I know the Home Builders Association had some comments on that. They also like the idea of us and some of the other communities going with a percentage rather than just saying 750 and that's it. You're done. Doesn't matter what lot size you are. You know, that's all you get. So that's another thing. And I think for the most part, for now, I just like to show kind of a map that Christelle has been working on at our staff level, kind of showing us these development areas, just so you can get a picture of what's going on in our community and some of the new projects that are in, underway or in process. So if we go to maybe Silverado, Brock. I think if you hit the little, it'll give the data if you hit the, yeah. So this is interesting. There's your site and it shows the, approval status. It's proposed. Total units or lots, 124. And you can see, that behind it, that's Desert Village, the townhomes of which we have 64 units, either under construction or closely done, total 185. But Silverado, you've got that area there, and we've got potentially 124 units. So, we have to, plan for water for that project. If we go to Black Desert, which we know is huge, that's really big, 1,937 units in our city, according to the development agreement. And we know Black Desert is the largest, but that's a lot of units. And so we need to plan for that. How can we provide that service? How do we get to that number? Can we get to the 0.55 or something close to that, here in the next few years to allow this to be developed? I mean, I look at Black Desert and we hear all types of things. Oh, that'll be done in 5 years. I think it'll be 5 to 10 because, there's a couple thousand units almost here. Ivans has another 1,500 or so, and then we have this golf course. And so it's a big project. It's a very big project, and I think that's going to take a minute. If we go down to Point at Entrada, that's the new one I was talking about earlier. It's going to have some really nice lots. It's a great age in place concept. We've got single family lots, 8,000 to 9,000 square feet. We've got an assisted living in the middle of 100 units for people that need assistance, of course, assisted living, but they also have Alzheimer's and dementia care. And then we'll also have some townhomes there directly across the street for some folks that you may have a couple, one's pretty healthy, but the other one needs a lot of help. And maybe that person's husband or wife needs a little help helping that person. So we've got a lot of units here. And so, we could go through this, but this is a great exhibit. And this is a tool we're using, working with the mayor and city staff. And Christelle's led the effort on this and done a really good job with this map. And these are the tools that we're providing to the Conservancy District so they have an understanding of the needs in our community. And so I just wanted to let everybody know that, we are doing that work behind the scenes and trying to be problem solvers and help the Conservancy District find solutions. But we've got a number of areas on here. The little red areas are just vacant lots in the city that have never been built on. And then we've got areas like Roan, Sycamores, the Hills, So there's quite a bit out there. And so at this point in Desert's Edge, which is the Robert Smith one that we were talking about earlier tonight, 239 units, pretty big project. And then we've got another property that's R110 right now. That's a good sized lot, 20 acres plus on the northwest portion of town that the Entz family owns. That there's been people calling and talking to us about that, wanting to develop that property. So, you know, the word's out. Santa Clara is a place where people want to be and folks love it here. And so we're trying to plan for the future and allow these things to happen. But with good planning, with good principles. And so right now I'd like to open it up. Mayor, if you'd like to give the Home Builders Association folks a chance to talk and share their thoughts, or open it up to the council, however you want to do it. I'm done with my part. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. You know, in the meetings that we've been having with the mayors and the other cities and the water district regarding this ordinance, it's kind of come, at least I boil it down to a couple of things. I don't think that the idea of having one ordinance that's exactly the same community-wide is going to work with the different communities. We're all made up differently. We have different development ordinances, and so I think there's going to be little tweaks that are going to have community to community. The real important thing is, the reason why we're doing it is that we have limited water. We need some additional time before we can rely on maybe the Lake Powell pipeline coming, getting in a redundant source. Conservation is a way that we can achieve that, where we can still facilitate some development and some growth and still be able to provide water to the residents. This ordinance affects new construction. So the new homes in Santa Clara's case, we put the pending ordinance in place last September, and it's due to expire in early March. And all the projects that we've approved since that day will have to comply with this ordinance as far as their outdoor use. And they've all been aware of that as they've come in. We haven't even accepted new detailed landscape plans until this ordinance was done. So they didn't have any vested right on the landscaping. They have to meet the ordinance. Right now, I had Dustin do a calculation before the meeting, and the state requires the community to have 0.89 acre feet of water per connection. We're using right now 0.86. Is that right? Acre feet. So we're pretty close to the allotment that the states had. The water district as a whole, Zach reported that we were down to like 0.78 as a district, and they were fairly comfortable that the state was gonna lower that. It hasn't happened yet though, but they are feeling pretty good about the 0.78. But the real goal is to get to the 0.55. And if we can reduce our outside use, there's not a lot you can do inside. There's a few things that have been put in the ordinance with recirculating pumps and efficient things, but the real low-hanging fruit is the outside use. If we can reduce some of that outside use and get it down to 0.55, then that'll provide some additional buffer to be able to facilitate the new growth that is coming online. Santa Clara is in a really good position, district. If you compare us with the district, we have a lot of our own water rights. We have our existing wells in Snow Canyon that deliver. We can provide all of our water for 7-8 months out of the year, but we rely on the district to meet our peak demands during the summer when the outside irrigation is in place. And so it's important that we do our part to reduce that use with our neighboring communities. The district has plans for new projects that'll be able to bring new water on. Some of those are in construction, some of those are in design, some of those are just on the table. And it'll be important that we follow through and implement those. And the regional reuse is an important component of that, that can be able to extend our water supply for a longer period. But as I've read through the other ordinances, I like this ordinance. I want to hear some feedback from the home builders because, when I look at it, like 20% of a lot, one thing that ours is different is we only have like 2 size lots in town. We don't have a big variety of lot size, so we've kind of set it to meet what we have here in Santa Clara. So I want to hear some feedback on that. There's been a ton of discussion on the pools, and yesterday they were all in the room together and there was still no agreement on the pools. So I've never had so much fun as sitting in a meeting when all the mayors are there, the city attorneys are there, and their public water people are there, their utility people. It can make for a lot of varying opinions, kind of fun to watch. But the idea we combined our multifamily with our commercial and non-residential type stuff. So that those multifamily projects that we're seeing, like the Regal Homes project, those new ones have they have common systems, common area irrigation systems that function a lot like a commercial. So it made sense to bring them all together in that the way we have, and made it a lot simpler as far as the enforcement goes. There's still some enforcement issues in this that we're going to have to work through. Who becomes the water police and make sure that their hot water recirculation systems are running, that they haven't gone back in 3 years after they got their CO and changed their outdoor irrigation, or that they haven't switched their secondary system over to the culinary system because they didn't like the smell of the secondary water. And that's going to be an exciting job for somebody to be able to go out and do that. We may have some individual water wars again on the streets, but we really need to try and achieve this. I had Dustin look at the Swiss Village. The only really multifamily project that the city has constructed right now that have any long-term water records are in the Swiss Village. They're using less than 0.2 acre feet per unit in that project. But if you look it up, there's not a common area open space. There's very small patios. There's hardly any outside irrigation. It's all indoor use. So it gives me hope that we'll be able to take advantage of these higher density projects that we've got coming in now, some of the apartment projects that Santa Clara City has never had. And now we've approved 2, and they're large. And so that will help offset some of the existing development out there's water use and help us get to that number without having to go back and becoming a strong arm with any of the existing residents. I think that we've got a lot of residents out there right now that as soon as the incentives come along and the water districts promise some incentives coming off of the surcharge fees, that they would make the conversion and reduce their outside lawn to try and help conserve water and save them money. I think you're going to see us come back and revisit our water fees and those tier rates and make some increases on those tier rates to get them up to where we can really control some of that outdoor use and penalize some of those high water users if it doesn't need to be. We've got some high water users, and it's going to take some time to do it. But I think it's important that we get this done. It's scheduled to, we'll hear some comments tonight, and then it's going to be public hearing
23rd.
on the 23rd of this month. And we need to get it adopted before the, early March and the pending ordinance expires. And so Mari and Stacy, you guys are here. We'd love to hear some feedback from you. Hopefully you've had a chance to review the current draft. Don't hold anything back. If you get on my nerves, I have a button here. And the ninjas show up and the problem's over. So come on up, Stacy.
Thanks a lot, Mayor. Really appreciate the invitation to come and meet with you tonight and talk about this very important issue. And your points are all super well taken. I thought you really touched on a lot of the stuff that's on all our minds, and certainly within our community, the topics that are on everyone's mind and tongue. Maybe what I'll do is just sort of quickly go through just almost in a bullet point fashion, our take on the ordinance, and then maybe we can spend a little bit more time on the areas that are more of hotter topics. First of all, we'll make it very clear that we're very supportive of this new emphasis on conservation. We think it's a fantastic direction, and we're in broad support of the adoption of the ordinance. So we are fundamentally in support of this direction. We support the installation of the hot water recirculation systems. That is one of the larger line items in this ordinance. If you were to just break it down in terms of direct costs, it's a fairly expensive line item, but it is one of the areas where we think the juice is worth the squeeze, that the water savings are significant enough that it does warrant that expenditure. So we do support that. We support the use of smart irrigation controllers and landscaping standards that emphasize shade trees and drought tolerant plant species. We support the ending the practice of placing turf in planter strips and on steep slopes. We support a turf maximum on new residential construction, and that's probably one of the areas we want to talk about a little bit further. But in general terms, we think that's another area where the water savings are the most immense, and therefore deserve some scrutiny and some tighter standards rather than looser. We support uniform conservation standards, including in HOAs and areas served by secondary irrigation water. And we certainly support the acceleration of the development of secondary irrigation water county-wide wherever that's feasible. That certainly helps our potable supply go much further, obviously. The areas where we have concerns or questions are the following. First of all, we feel the 15% slope maximum may be just a little shallow. That's 3 feet across a 20-foot yard, and that seemed just a little shallow to us. We would recommend 20%. That seems to still achieve what the goal is in terms of not having a lot of runoff, but just allow a little bit more latitude there. We are concerned, I believe, if I remember right, Santa Clara's ordinance has removed this, but we do oppose the individual metering of multifamily homes. As you just mentioned, the multifamily, by its nature, uses so much less water than single family detached that the individual metering and some of these measures may be excessive, considering the amount of savings that you'd actually get out of the additional regulation. And then I think where a lot of our concern is, we've gotten as we've gotten our hands on the draft ordinance, is the sections that are that seem to really create quite a bit of administrative burden, both on the city side and within our builder community. That section, I think it's 50 in your ordinance, but 5 in the draft ordinance, really gets highly specific about submitting plans with every lot and tree calipers and zoning trees separate from other plants and so on. And that was an area where we felt like the amount of water savings that you were really going to get out of those measures are so minimal that we're not sure that makes it. We're not super comfortable with that. So I think those are the highlights. You talked about the pool thing a bit, and Jim, I think, summarized our position well. The concern is sort of a two-parter. One, that during the summer they're left uncovered anyway. Pools are, just to keep the water at a comfortable level, and the second is that there are alternative ways to cover a pool, safety pool covers and so forth, that are a lot more affordable than an automatic pool cover, and so. We're a little bit, we would certainly resist a mandate there as well. We do, though, certainly support elevating evaporation as a point of emphasis in education. One of the things that we're working on within the HBA is how we can be another sort of medium for communication about water conservation and water matters generally. And so a couple of the things that we're in the early stages of working on is number one, a tear sheet that builders can easily reference best practices, so they can walk their buyers through good decision making as they're planning their homes, as they're deciding whether or not to put a pool cover on. We can educate them better than we do today. And secondly, a second tear sheet that would communicate the answers to some of the questions that our builders get all the time, especially from folks that are new to the area. They want to know about water. You know, it's a very common question. So in collaboration with the Conservancy District, we hope to develop a few communication tools along those lines as well to help with the education process around conservation and water generally. Last thing I'll mention is that we also do support the adoption of advanced metering systems that allow better tracking of leakage, whether it's negligence or a broken pipe or what have you. Those are good systems that can also help tamp down on water loss from pools and other forms of the water system. I think those are the main comments. I think to circle back up to the turf question, I think as we do prefer the more simplified approach you guys have taken as a percentage of the lot. That's a simpler way to get your mind around it. I think if we had our druthers, we would probably in fact exchange lower percentages for in that area, because we think there is real water savings to be had there versus some of the administrative headache of that section 5. So, I don't know what the right number is. As I was trying to get informed on the issue a little bit deeper, I tried to review other cities' conservation measures. The one that seemed to be the clearest to find and easiest to follow was Las Vegas's. Their standard is they only regulate turf. They allow 50% of the side and rear yards to be turf up to a maximum of 5,000 square feet. And it obviously depends a little bit on the lot size that you map that onto, but putting onto a fairly typical lot size of 10,000 square feet or so, and putting kind of a typical house on that, it looked to me like that would translate to roughly a 15% turf allowance in that scenario, just to give you a sense of what another cities do. I'm not saying that's right or wrong or anything else, but just as a comparison. So I think again to the numbers that you guys have on the board right now, I think for us it kind of skews a little bit towards favoring the larger lots, and in terms of both the treatment of multifamily versus single family, and in terms of the turf allowance. So the 10% turf is a fairly low number. The 5,000 square foot number is a fairly high number. I think that would be our feedback there. Would add at this point, Laurie, that Yeah, thanks for reminding me. So one of the reasons we're very much on board with this conservation push is our sort of state of the art of new construction is very compliant with this as it stands today. And so, and I think that's reflective in the usage numbers that the Conservancy District has published. You may have seen they disclosed that we saved 400 million gallons of water 2021 versus 2020, despite growing by 5% our population. So even though our population went up year over year, our water use in aggregate actually went down. It's about a 2.5% drop in water use in that year. And if you look a little bit further back over the last 5+ years, you actually see that the total aggregate water being used in the county is quite flat, despite the growth that we've experienced. And we put a lot of that down to the fact that the interior of homes are far more efficient in their use of water, whether it's the your dishwasher, your clothes washer, et cetera. That's all a lot more efficient. And people have really embraced xeriscaping. They see it as a very attractive way to landscape their home and very fitting for our setting here. So we think that we're on the right track in terms of most of our existing practices and codifying that and leaning into that, we're very much in favor for. I think our concern is that in terms of driving that usage down from the state mandated 8.89 to some lower number, we're not sure how much savings can be squeezed out of the new construction. So that would be one of our concerns with this ordinance, is it's not getting it at where the real water savings may lie. And so as you mentioned, I know there are other initiatives following on to this that may aid that along. As I was in the Las Vegas ordinance, I noticed one of the things that they touted was that over 10 years, they had converted 900 acres of golf course from turf to xeriscaping, which is the equivalent of something like 9 18-hole golf courses. So just as one example. So yeah, I think that the good news is, I mean, water's on everyone's mind, and the growth puts us all on edge a little bit. But to me, part of the underlying story is we are actually doing quite well already in conserving water in the county.
Right. Anything else?
I think that's it. Unless you have any questions or anything you want to.
Questions for the home builders? I had one. When you talk about the administrative burden, you're talking about the planting plans and the landscape documentation package requirements.
Yes. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, and then some of the specific stuff like the tree diameter and some of that stuff seemed almost more fitting in a landscape ordinance and a conservation ordinance, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Council, questions, comments?
Mayor, can I just make one comment that I think is relevant to that observation? Just for clarity, there are some pretty extensive requirements for documentation under the multifamily residential and non-residential. But if you go, those are only applicable to those categories. If you go down to the section after that, the landscape and irrigation design standards, that's the section that applies to everything. So if you're talking about single family residential, single family residential would not have the most onerous requirements. Those would only apply to non-residential and commercial, or excuse me, multifamily residential and non-residential, if that makes sense. So I think not to discount the comment, I think it's a valid comment, but I do think that mitigates a little bit the concern.
Yeah, that was one of my questions, just to make sure that was not in the single family as a lot owner.
Yeah, the only thing that would apply to the single family is under 1792-050 landscape and irrigation design standards. But that section doesn't have the extensive requirements for plan review and things like that. So just has some guidelines for selecting plants and.
Right, which is 040, right, Matt? The more complicated.
Yes,
Yes.
040 is the more onerous one that applies to multifamily and non-residential.
And that now we're already requiring landscape plans. So there's things that are added in there, but under the commercial, under the plan development, things like that, they're already providing, the multifamily and that, they're already providing. Some of it gets into the irrigation design. I had a question as far as you get into that, are we going to implement it? And this is where the administration part of it comes in of, are we going to have another fee? Is there where does that all land? And I think that's why I was glad to make sure that wasn't part of the single family, but
Yeah. a landscape architect is only required for multifamily or non-residential. You can still have a landscape designer do a residential design. So, yeah, so there's a difference between the requirements in those two categories.
So one question for the group. So back to the percentages, just so I understand this correctly. Total irrigated landscape cannot exceed 20%. Total turf area is 10%. So is the turf area part of the 20%? Or
Yes,
you're allowed for 20% of landscape area, whether it's
right.
okay.
It's 20% total is what we were looking at, and that includes everything. The lawn area at 10% right now is part of that 20%.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we weren't
Right.
20%. Yeah.
And one thing we were discussing and Stacy alluded to it is perhaps our cap is high. So, the 20%, the 10%, and maybe we talked about this afternoon at 2,500 square feet. Maybe our cap is too high, and that's kind of what we heard there. We could also look at those percentages. Maybe the lawn area is 10%, but then the overall is 18% because we've heard this number 17, 18%. But maybe we allow the lawn at 10, the overall at 18, and then the max or the cap at 2,500 square feet. Just some thoughts.
And on that, I guess the lawn area is the big water user. So it just, if we're capping,
Mm-hmm.
the non-turf area, lowering that, I actually like the numbers.
Yeah.
I didn't know. It just seems like if we're, I guess you get down, we're going to start seeing 6,000 square foot. We're going to see these lot sizes come down. So,
like the mayor was saying, we have two different lot sizes for the most part. And for a 10,000 square foot lot, they get 1,000 square feet of lawn. So they could have 500 in the front, 500 in the back, or put it all in the back, but they would get 1,000 square feet.
Yeah.
For lawn.
This is where the map is really benefiting Santa Clara. Because right now, can you pull the map back up?
I'm the map.
When you look at Santa Clara's boundaries, does this work? Yeah, but it doesn't show the audience. Santa Clara's in a really unique position in the fact that we're landlocked. We've talked about this before, and you look at the pieces up there that don't have the red shade on them, or that doesn't show any existing development. And there's 30 acres right there where the mouse is. The 20 acres is owned by the Robert and Brent Ants, and 10 acres is owned by the school district that they've kind of been holding out for a potential elementary school. Black Desert is completely shaded. The lava there is owned by the city. And I don't think it'll ever be developed. The vacant area is the wash, the Sand Hollow wash that won't be developed because of the floodplain issues that are in there. Our boundary is that north line. So that's our city boundary on the north, right through there. And that's our city boundary on the west. This is all river, floodplain, the remaining farms, and the BLM property is just off the screen. So what you see is what we got. And if you start talking about number of lots, so where right now our zoning ordinance would require a PD zone. So you could maybe take the 20 acres of Robert and Brent Ants and try and do a R16 or some type of subdivision up in there. Maybe in the valley. I kind of doubt that based on the existing land use and everything down in the valley, and the fact they're not making any more of that valley property. And we're seeing larger lots go in there, and then all those areas have secondary. We have secondary access throughout the valley. All of this has access to secondary water. Now we've got secondary water access to everything up here. This is already converted to secondary. There's secondary available here, right? So, and there's quite a bit of secondary water rights available on the west side. So ours is kind of set up for that R110, which is all the heights, and that's probably more in a redevelopment. Solace, Rome, a portion of Black Desert, and then the multifamily. We've kind of really got those two, with the large ag lots in the valley all being access to secondary water. So it's a little different than a lot of the other communities that have those large expanses of potential growth area, but also 8 or 10 different residential lot sizes that can go in there. And so we've been able to simplify it that way. And personally, I like that simplification, keeping it simple as we go forward. And the secondary is going to be the real key out here, and getting the reuse system going to free up the room for what we need to finish out. The 3,700 is basically going to double the size of the city. Well, if we get it, it'll triple the size of the city just in that remaining area. From what we have right now, we've got 2,200 units now, another 3,700, 1.5 times what we've got right now and then we're done. And then we're going vertical, and outside irrigation becomes a little less of a moot point when we start doing sky rises in the downtown long after I'm gone. But the sycamore will just still be here. So anyway, any other comments?
Well, one of the thoughts that I had is when we're talking about affordable housing, and we're even talking in the multifamily to hire landscape architects, all that is going to add to the costs if we have to do it in single family residential, which I understand we don't. Our standard is for a home, we've got to have the front area landscaped, but the rear area is not. But are we going to require a plan for that now, or is it still under the discretion of the homeowner?
The ordinance as currently written does not require a specific plan for a single family home.
But it does have limitations on what they can do.
It does. Yeah.
Right. I understand that, but as far as having to hire a landscape architect or a design specialist, that won't necessarily happen. But
Right. They'd apply for a permit and we take a look at what they've got going on and look at the percentages, but where they get into the, I'm sorry, I was just looking at it here, the required documentation, the landscape documentation package, which is more technical, that's multifamily and commercial. And that makes sense because, if we get a project like Silverado, and we've talked about Regal Homes and some of these others going down, Robert Smith's project, but for a single family home, no. And we can work with them and help them out. And so staff, we're going to have to review some of these plans, and we understand that.
So I have a question. I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
My first question is in same relation to that. Generally, homeowners will just put in their front yard because that's all that's required for the CO. At what point are you going to determine that they're meeting your 20 and 10% rules anyways, if they're not putting in the backyard prior to the CO? I mean, are we going to have somebody coming out at 9 months down the road, or a year down the road, or 2 years down the road to do an inspection to say, okay, I'm going to come out and measure?
Mm-hmm.
I think you're going to look at your meters. We're all digital meters now, so we can monitor the water usage month to month to month to month, day to day to day, hour to hour probably, and see it. So you'll see the difference, and there's probably going to have to be some processes put up into that where you would red flag when you see a sudden jump, the way we do right now with leaks, we can notify a property owner if his usage starts to increase dramatically to just verify if there may be a leak in the system. I think we're going to have to develop a process where when we see those users start to increase, there's going to be a couple things that happen in addition to the ordinance. If we increase the tiered rate system to where there's a penalty, if they start using more water than that 0.55, say, there's going to be something's going to happen. There'll be a consequence. You're going to start paying more rates. You may get into the new surcharge that the water district's charging, as well as the higher city rates. There's going to be fees associated with it, but we'll also see the increase when they change it from the front to the back and they double or maybe even triple if the front yard is all desert scape, their water usage. We'll be able to see that. We've got, pictometries that we're doing every year. So you're getting new imagery almost constantly of those homes is that you can go in there and very simply online, one of the staff members can pull up and calculate the same way the water district did, how much turf is in that yard, just looking at the aerial. You can monitor that way. Now, the enforcement side of it, I heard Class C misdemeanor from the Washington City Attorney. I think that's what he said. If you break the rules, there's gonna be some penalty. There will be a consequence. We still got to work on that. As far as what we're gonna do here, and we're kind of watching what the neighbors decide to do with some of those consequences. I think Washington City's got that in their ordinance. Ours doesn't, right, Matt?
That's right.
No, yeah, there's nothing there.
But that may be something that we amend. One thing that I've told the group we've been working with is, hey, we're kind of under the gun to get this underway, not just because we need to get the water usage down, but because of the pending ordinance. So this is probably going to go through in some form or fashion by the end of the month. We may come back and revisit this and add additional language, maybe some additional enforcement actions and things like that. In the future, it can be amended to include some of that stuff. And I think everybody is still trying to figure out how are we going to monitor and enforce to make sure that and that'll be based on what the results are. Everybody's trying to get to that 0.55 goal. Everybody's going to take a little different path, hopefully to try and get there. Some of the communities aren't even going to try. So, and then what's going to happen that way? There's been discussion. What if a community comes in and just says, we're not going to do any of this. We're just going to develop. We're going to do what we want. And we're in the RWSA, so you've got to provide us our water. And there's discussion on how you throw a community out of the RWSA going on right now. So I think, there's a lot going on beyond this little ordinance. It's a big ordinance, but this step right here is the initial step of a lot of steps that are going to happen to be able to facilitate that we've got a good, reliable source of culinary water. And that's what it is at the end of the day. What are we going to do to buffer us during drought periods? What are we going to do if Lake Powell Pipeline is delayed another 15 years? What are we going to do to make sure the residents have the water? And these ordinances are going to be tweaked as we go, and trying to get to that end goal of, being able, the 0.55 just lets us expand our water, existing water sources that we've got, which are limited longer into the future. That's really all it's doing. It's just allowing us some additional time for some, the maintain the economy and everything else that we kind of enjoy down here. People want to move here. We don't want to necessarily close the border and say no more growth. That changes the whole dynamic of Washington County. I don't think I want to stay if that's going to be the case, because then only the wealthy will live here, and they're not that much fun to live around. So,
I've got one question about the tweaking of the billing cycles, because with our utility, the power rate that we just increased, we do it on a 6-month basis. The water is similar because during the winter, I'm not going to use anywhere near the 55%. But during the summer, I'm going to exceed it. Are we going to average it? So there will be some way of the weighted average, so I don't get hit in July with a penalty for excess usage. And in January, do I get a bonus for less usage? I mean, I understand what I'm saying. Is there going to be some kind of equitable? Do we have an annual amount that you can use? And it's divided over 12-month period, or?
No, we haven't put that into this ordinance.
And I don't know that you would. One of the goals we've got to achieve is that cities have to start utilizing their full amount. So we use our wells 70–80% of the time. They're going to want us to jump that to 100% of the time. And I'm okay with it as long as the water that we're generating and not using, we get compensated back for it. That goes into our rates that can help keep, those base rates down. So are we going to average it over the year? Probably not. But the rate that you'll be paying will be based on using our 100% and getting compensated for whatever we're not using.
Well, I understand that, but there's going to be a point in time where I'm going to be, not necessarily myself, but somebody is going to be using double what the allotment is. And they're going to pay exceedingly heavy for it. And then in other months, they're not even going to scare the budgeted amount.
And the 0.55 is an annual amount.
That's what
Yeah, that's determined on an annual basis.
But I think he's talking about the water rate that we're looking at. Is a person going to get penalized on a excessive rate in July when most of us shut our irrigation off end of October and don't turn it on until middle of February?
That's the only time you would be assessing those rates, because when you're not irrigating, you're not even going to come close.
Yeah.
I think, if I can add, I think on my thought on that, and I did the conversion to 0.55 acre feet, it's like 179,000 gallons annually. I know, and Wendell had brought this up too, kind of the same point previously. I think on our rates, you set them up in a tiered rate. So yeah, in the summer months, you would pay more. But if you go to like an excess water surcharge, like what the district has, I think it's one where you could look at on an annual basis. But on a monthly basis, if you used a high amount, you would pay based on the amount, but you wouldn't get hit like an excess water charge. And if we set it at 179,000 a year until you went over that, then you would maybe get hit with that excess water surcharge, but maybe not on a
So
monthly basis.
on an annual basis, you'd be hit with an excess bill.
You could do it that way, but your tiered rates still would affect you on a monthly basis.
And you might be able to do it, I don't know, talking about the PCA method where it kind of rolls,
Yeah, that's.
the rolling address, something like that you could probably do. Be a little more complicated.
It'd be a little harder to figure, but it would almost seem to be more equitable if you used part of the summer months with part of the winter months in
Pay
a rolling average.
Yeah, that rolling average probably be something to look at.
Okay, can I ask, I have two more questions. Well, a comment and then a question. My comment, these are specific to the design standard section, so the 50. I actually agree with Stacy. I'm not a huge fan of the hydrozone concept and having to have different valves for each type of planted area. And I think there are other ways to accomplish that without having to have landscapers and homeowners go to the expenses of all these valves and running lines and pipe and all sorts of things. You can change emitters, you can do all sorts of different things to, I think, accomplish some of the same goal. So it's just a comment that I'm not a huge fan of that particular. That's number 3 under C. And then my other question is number 5 in that section. When we talk about rehabilitated landscape, that's not defined in the definitions. but it says spray head to drip conversion for rehabilitated landscape sites may be acceptable with city approval of irrigation design plans. Not knowing what rehabilitated landscape is, I take that to mean if I have a front yard and I have my traditional spray pop-up nozzles in my yard right now, and I want to go in and say, put traditional artificial turf in. I hate that we use the word turf for lawns, but we put artificial turf in. I'm going to cap, I'm not going to change them to drip, but I'm going to cap all my existing spray lines. Is that considered a rehabilitated landscape under this? And then do I have to come and get city approval and create some design plan? Because that's how I'm reading that.
Do you think that's applicable to existing homes or are we?
Well, that's how I'm reading it, if it's rehabilitated.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the way I read it too. And I think the idea is that it's making an allowance for, let's say you want to, replant your lawn or something like that. It's not going to require you to, well, I don't know. We maybe need to refine that a little bit because the way I was thinking this made sense was that it provides some allowance for areas where there was landscape and there still will be landscape, as opposed to places where you're putting new landscape in that weren't there before.
So how does the rehabilitated landscape area in which over 50% of the existing landscape is removed and replaced? If it's under 50%, you have no issue.
Yeah, I don't think there's I don't think it's defined that way, but I mean, we could do something like that. So.
Well, most of the time, your overall, you're not going to change 50% of your whole landscaping plan. You may take out grass in a certain area and put in turf, but usually if you're talking about the entire landscape plan, well, that's not true. Sometimes you do.
Yeah, but there's no limitation in that section. I mean, there's not a percentage set. It just says if you rehabilitate it, then you have to have an approved irrigation design plan. So I'm thinking if I'm the homeowner and I want to take out my front lawn, not change my curbing, my drip systems, any of that. All I want to do is put in artificial turf where my existing grass is. To me, that seems like a no-brainer benefit. If I'm willing to pay the cost to put in artificial turf, I shouldn't have to draw up a design plan and come to the city and request approval from the city. That's a whole lot of additional added expense. And all I'm doing is trying to conserve water and put in artificial turf.
I want an answer to that,
capping
but I'm
my
in the
exact
process of doing that right.
Right.
We're
And I
not
think
going to grandfather you in.
Yeah, I know.
I think every homeowner who's wanting to help in conservation and to get back to Stacy's point, where we can make the biggest impact on existing homes that have huge amounts of water use right now, that's where we need to see the conservation. I think we want to advocate for that and not put this type of a limitation on them.
The first thing I would say is replacing irrigated landscaping with artificial turf is not putting in new landscaping under the definitions in this ordinance, because landscape is irrigated landscape. So artificial
Okay.
turf doesn't count against that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's the first comment. And maybe that's the only comment. So I'll leave it at that.
That's good.
So given the scenario I outlined, then if Denny does that, or if I do that, well, Ben doesn't need to do that. He has a new house. But if the rest of us do that and we go in, I could go in after the ordinance is passed and I can just tear out my lawn, cap off my lines,
Yeah,
and I don't have to come for approval.
Yeah, when I short of, putting a definition in, which is probably a good idea, but when the phrase rehabilitated landscaping to me is not based on the way things are defined here. You're not taking out landscaping and putting in hardscape or artificial turf, or you're replacing one landscaping with another landscaping. So let's say, for example, you currently have 30% of your yard in landscaping. I think the idea is that if you if you want to replace some of your lawn with new landscaping, you don't have to meet those new percentages. You might have to convert some of your stuff from spray to drip to comply with this. And that would be subject to approval of some kind of a plan. But I get your point about, why are we requiring a plan? I think, again, the way I read it was to give some allowance for a home where there is existing landscaping, you're wanting to rehabilitate it, do something new. And, you're not going to be required to meet those percentages.
Okay, it might be good just to make the definition then,
Yeah.
so that we don't.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is a draft, so there's going to be some
Sure.
rough stuff in it.
Sure.
So on that, the drip and your hydro zones are, the way it's spelling it out is we're asking residents to run 2 drip systems, correct? On
At least.
number 7,
Well,
trees
not
must
here.
be irrigated on a separate hydro zone.
At least. You could have a drip
This-
system for trees, a drip system for shrubs, a drip system for garden. You're gonna have valves and blinds. and-
Which is, yeah, it's just these, anytime we're adding valves and meters, and to me, just set up the potential for more leaks and
In my view,
do we-
you just control it with emitters. You just change the emitters that you can run it on the same
Yeah.
line. You just change the emitter, and you
Yeah, I
have an
don't-
emitter for a tree and you have an emitter for the shrub, and you change the volume that comes out of the emitter. It accomplishes the same thing. I thought.
well, I know who should be inspecting these installs when people are doing them. Councilwoman Mathis.
No.
I did have an idea on that. So every planning commission meeting that is missed, they have to go do 5 inspections. So I just know they get reimbursed $50, but if they miss 5 rear yard landscape inspections. So I do think there are things in that that are cumbersome. Obviously the intent is to educate and multiplying drip systems and valves.
Bring in the landscape architects and the landscapers and explain it all to them.
Well, and
They do come in
the
and do it.
landscape architect, I'm glad that's on the, I get nervous, and that was my question here. Are we, because I had to provide a landscape plan. Now, it wasn't an architect when I came into my house, but I had to provide a drawing. And I did it. It was awesome. All colored up and but I was required to do it as part of my permit. And I just wanted to make, because this is,
As part of your,
these are the good old days.
Your
in
building
Santa
permit.
Clara City.
as part of your
So-
building permit application.
I had to bring a landscape design. I'll send it to you. It was,
We have
One of my-
requirement, when you build castles in Santa Clara, we have different requirements.
it literally took me back to elementary school. I was
There's
in
a
my
moat.
office for just coloring that thing up. And I was really proud of it. I did like 4 versions of it too. So, and I did pretty good, but are we, for requiring front landscape, are we, this going back to single family?
So this doesn't change any requirements elsewhere in the ordinances. So if you were required to provide a landscape design, even if it was hand drawn by you, I'm sure it was beautiful.
It was.
But that would still be a requirement. That doesn't change this.
Is
Or this-
that,
this doesn't change that
so that was my question. I was kind of whispering over here, but.
Yes, we are requiring it, but right now the ordinance just states you have to landscape the front yard. However, we're going to use this opportunity to educate the public that in the future, and we're undecided on whether we will require a permit when they move forward to landscape the rear yards, or how we will handle that at this time. So all of your input is very necessary in how we will move forward with this. So thank you for bringing it up.
But so on the homes requiring, is it a sketch? Are you requiring a professional drawn?
No, it's just
Or
a sketch.
Okay. And I think the intent of it was to give an idea of what, trees and meet some of the standards there. But if we're requiring a front landscape plan, I just that was part of my concern going in, that, I've got notes all through there, who's enforcing, what's the cost? Because, a landscape plan, just so I pay because Entrada requires it. It costs me between $2,000 and $3,000 to do a professionally, a landscape architect to have that done. That's per resident. And so as we think down this and we start thinking of affordable housing and everything else, just keep that in the back of your mind that it will add, just for the design, between $2,000 and $3,000. Now into the big subdivisions where they, the Ents and Salisbury's and some of these, they're going to have 2 or 3 designs and you're going to pick them. So, but on a single family where you're just going in and designing, that's what that cost will be.
Mayor, one comment. I believe that this is something that's very important to get done as quickly as possible. And I do think the devil is in the detail, but the sooner we can generally approve an ordinance and get it in place, it'll be easy to tweak it and move forward. And in this particular case, I don't see the water situation doing any better than it's done in the last couple of years, looking at what the forecast is for the spring. And to me, we've got to get it in place now. So
I'd agree. I do have one other question for the experts out in the audience. So the hot water circulation, the rate, I've heard some discussion. No, I can't find it. Oh, this first displacing more than 0.6 gallons of system water. Is that number too high?
That's 42 feet. That's the energy code. So what that is, that's 42 feet of a 1/2 inch pipe.
Can I just comment on that? Because I did look that up in the most recent version of the energy code, which I think is the 2021, and it's actually 0.5. So I don't know if the 0.6 is from a previous version that's actually, because the state and the city is not actually using the newest version. So maybe the 0.6 is.
Yeah. And in commercial, it's not going to matter, because commercial, any public lab, you can't run more than 2 feet. So you're going to have it comes down to residential. And I thought, whether it's 0.5 or 0.6, it's a ratio of how many feet they can get. And what they've done is the energy code's just specified out where you hit a point of there's no savings. And it would allow for tract home builders in the right design to put that water heater in a garage to where, 1 or 2 bathrooms could be back to back and not be required. And it would, so 0.6, 0.5, I know the distance is 42 feet. And then obviously that number goes down dramatically on a 3/4 inch line. So
leave it at 0.6.
The 0.6, you're figuring off the 0.5, which is 42 feet. The 0.6 takes it up to 51
there you go.
and change.
So
Yeah, I haven't been able to figure out where the 0.6 came from, because
So we're going to
0.5 is what the-
recommend 0.5.
0.5.
0.5, you've got that there, Cody, that it shows it on your distances.
Yeah, it gives you, it's out of the energy code. It gives you a table. When you work the numbers, it works to 42 for 0.5 and 51 for 0.6.
And that must be some type of an average because the operating pressure would determine the real distance.
It's strictly off volumes. It tells you how many ounces you can fit in a length of 1/2 inch pipe, 3/8 pipe, and right down the table here. So
But if I jack up the pressure on the upstream end, I can make it go farther
you can
faster.
squeeze a little bit more hydrology in there.
That doesn't change the GPM. or what comes.
Okay. Other questions, comments?
I just want to tell staff, you guys work hard on this and as a community, I think there's things in there that we could go back and forth on a lot, but I think in a whole, this is a really good start. And kudos to everybody, including the home builders.
Mayor, can I ask one question to the home builders?
Absolutely.
I just want to clarify,
Yes,
make sure.
too.
I think just one. Go with Matt and have just one. In your letter back before the water summit, you wrote a letter saying your recommendation was at 18%, if I remember correctly. And then I believe Zach Renstrom came back and said he got data from you guys and you guys were actually performing at 16%. Are those numbers correct?
So you can really live with 14%.
14% total area.
Right. Adding gardens.
I just had the one
Did
question.
you get your answer?
Well, it sounded like that, yes, they're better than the 18% that they stated.
You're in St. George City. You're going to be at 10.
Yeah.
I'm only gonna be at 750 square feet no matter what. So that's why I will not be building in St. George City if I ever.
Elena makes a point of, do we talking gardens and other areas? I like the
Gardens are
but I'm-
They're
What's that?
excluded?
Mhm. If you look in the applicability section at the beginning of the ordinance, it excludes garden spaces.
So that's how you get around it. You throw a few tomato plants in your lawn. I'm totally kidding. I'm just kidding. Can we strike that
Plants and
from the
food
record? I'm done.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, well, thank you, guys. This will be on the agenda 23rd.
Yeah, well, we'll bring it back. I'm sure we'll work on it tweaks. Well, next week's meeting will be to set the public hearing. If we have revisions, I guess we can bring it back and have a discussion next week as well. Make sure we're all on the same page before we hit the public hearing. So.
Well, we do have a public hearing set for next week with the planning commission. So it has to go there and then it'll come back here on the 23rd because
Oh, we don't need a public.
that's what we were directed to do.
Okay,
No, so we won't be having a public hearing.
that counts.
No,
So we're not
just at the
doing it on
planning
23rd.
commission.
And it's on the 10th.
What's that?
So we're not doing it on the 23rd.
Okay.
We-
We will.
I don't know if we're gonna have them for planning commission. That has to go out tomorrow, Matt. That's not,
We don't even need.
I mean, we've really only talked about a couple of things tonight.
Yeah.
So I think we could have something to them. So,
What's that?
to them before planning commission or to them before council.
oh, before planning commission, I don't know. I think we could have something
think
for
so.
planning commission though.
Yeah, but we have, the adopting authorities, the council on the 23rd. So
Mhm.
that, yes.
But yeah, Mari will get you a copy of it and any changes that get made, we'll make sure you're forwarded. And thank you, guys. We really appreciate your input.
Can I just ask one question, Mayor, before we end? We did get a little bit of feedback from folks that some of the landscape design requirements were maybe a little onerous. If I could get some specific feedback from anyone, whether it's just, you can tell me now, or if you want to send me an email and just let me know which things you're concerned about so that I know where to make some cuts.
Are you talking about like the hydro zones and the 2.5?
Yeah, I mean, you
the
talked
2.5
about that.
inch calipers.
Yeah, I
and
can
that-
work on that a little bit, but I don't know if there's anything else in those provisions that,
Okay.
I mean, do we want to just pull out the tree caliper requirements? I just kind of need a sense of what we want to keep and what we don't, so I know how to do the
So
revisions.
do you want us just to email you our opinions?
That'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd need some consults with a landscaper.
Yeah.
Okay, that it? Council report or staff reports? See ya.
See ya.
Kara, wanna go first?
Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kara Tashik. I am the interim fire chief. I've been asked by Brock and Scott to step in, and I'm honored to serve our department while we interview and find a new chief. I do currently work for the department full-time paramedic firefighter, so I'll give you an update of what's been going on in our department in January. So we had a total of 137 calls. That actually is up 16 calls from December. 100 medical calls. We transported 62 patients, 18 refusals, and 20 lift assists. That's almost every day. 13 fire calls. The majority of those were citizen assists, which are like battery exchanges or assisting with smoke detectors. Personnel. We have hired 2 new people just recently, part-time staff, pending their background checks. One's a paramedic who has a history of working EMS and fire in San Bernardino. So we're very excited to have him come aboard. The second is a new AEMT and firefighter. She's newer, but I think she'll do great with us as well. Landscape and grounds. We're very grateful the Parks Department is helping us at Rachel Station with our updates. Without them, I don't think we could have got that project done even this year. So thank you to Brad and his crew for helping us. We have many business inspections going on right now. We're just wrapping all those up for the end of the year. Training, we've had 4 trainings this past month in January. January 6th, we trained on chimney fires. We actually had one of our staff members build a chimney prop, which was pretty amazing. January 14th, 15th, we did what we call ACLS, which is like advanced cardiac life support. It is a certification class that we are required to take every 2 years. January 20th, we learned about building construction. And on the 21st and 22nd, we had Winter Fire School come to town. We had many of our staff members attend that as well. We also held one citizen CPR class last month. We had 7 people signed up. However, with the increase in COVID, we had a lot of people kind of change their mind last minute, but we still had 3 students. And so we thought that was still pretty good. That's really all we have going on in our department right now, other than our current interviews, and just waiting to see what the future holds for us for a new chief. Do you have any questions for me?
I have one. The CPR classes or CPR class that you held,
Yes.
how was it put out? How did people know how to sign up for it?
Yeah, we put it in the Santa Clara newsletter, the Ivan City newsletter, and as well as our Facebook page.
It sounds like you're busy, Kara. Does the firefighters have any time for some, I don't want to call it wildland crew, but in the past, we've done some vegetation management in some of the waterways for the Flood Control Authority. Do they have any time for any of those projects? I've got one if they're interested. And they do pay like when they go do the work for the Forest Service or some of that at Duck Creek or whatever, or Pine Valley.
Yes, that sounds like it's probably a great job. I don't know what your time frame is for that to be completed, but possibly when we get our full-time wildland crew on before they get sent out, that might be a great project for them.
And they bring them on 1st April?
April, I believe, yes.
May. We bumped it back to May.
Oh, leave them on extra time.
Yeah, because we were ending the end of September and we were having a lot of things happening in October and we were unable to help out. So we pushed it back.
So they could be available sometime in early May.
Yes.
Okay, let me check on it. Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Appreciate you. Bradley? Did you pay attention to this ordinance when you read landscape the fire station? Have you got separate hydro zones?
We're gonna go check.
Yes, we do.
The question is this rehabilitated? landscape?
Define rehabilitation.
Yeah, we have separate zones.
Is that rehabilitation? Is it more than 50%?
Only at the church garden,
Oh, it's a garden?
at the Tobler Park.
And never mind.
Everything's gonna get defined as a garden now. That's what's gonna
Yeah.
happen.
At Goobler Park, we're working to extend the 4 backstops at the ball fields. There's always been an issue with foul balls coming over and endangering spectators and things like that. So we have a tailor-made. We went out and got bids, and tailor-made was the lowest bidder, and they're going to extend those with the 6-foot overhangs to keep a lot of those balls from getting out of the field. We had tried nets and different things, but I think this is the best solution to keep a lot of those balls where they belong inside the field. Also, we're working, Dustin and I have been discussing removing some of the grass at Goobler Park, trying to cut down some of that water consumption in some of the areas outside the fields. So we're discussing fields 2 and 3 to move the fences in and take some of the turf out that's not used there along between the trail and the ball field, just trying to conserve some water. Also to conserve water, we took out the Little League infields and now they're dirt. We're just about to finish that project up. The south field is laser graded and we're waiting on more material for the north field. And that'll make those fields a lot safer to play on. They'll be level, they'll have portable mounds that are always the same height, and it'll make it a lot better so you don't have any balls hitting off the uneven turf that we've had problems with in the past, and be easier to maintain. Let's see. I wanted to thank Gary and the power department. I got a call from the CVs down the street, and there was a big sycamore limb that was about 4 inches long and about 20 feet long hanging over the driveway, and it was just hanging on a little dead limb about that big. That's the only thing that was holding it up. So they went and used their bucket truck because it was up high in the tree, and they took it out. And I think I talked to Gary about lunch, and they had it out by the end of the day. So they got right after it and took care of it. So makes the city look good. And also wanted to thank them for removing a big pine tree that was in the power line at Heritage Square. They did that today. It was a tree that was actually, 40, 50 feet tall, and it was up in the power line. And it was something that we couldn't get a contractor to do, because of the proximate location inside the fence. And the plan is to put a storage building in there a little bit closer so it's easier to get the tables and the chairs out for weddings and stuff. So in that corner, in the back corner there. We had the DSU class come out yesterday and do service at the cemetery. They mulched all the trees in the middle section of the cemetery. I had about 12 students come out. They did that and worked for about 2 hours. They had a good time. The weather was nice, and they had fun, and they actually get a grade for that. It's considered a test when they come out and do service. So I'll have the same class coming back on the 5th, and then I've got another one coming back on the 8th to do service this semester. Jarrett, Councilman Wade asked me to bring up the tree removal at the Tobler Park. We haven't got a decision on what to do with that, so I was wondering if you had any questions about what the plans were for that. I wasn't able to be at that meeting when Jarrett discussed it, but the plan was at that meeting was to come in and remove the existing apricot trees and then plant with other varieties of trees.
Was that an advertised item? No?
Not that I'm aware of.
Did anybody know about it other than the people that call me?
Wendell knew about it. He was quite upset.
I would be all for new species though, some peach, but how are we gonna go about it?
I was just wondering, and I missed the meeting, so I didn't hear the discussion, but if it could be phased.
I have a drawing of the different irrigation zones that are in there. There's 5, so you could actually phase it, like you could do the top half, or you could do the area, the bottom half, where the building and the parking lot and all that stuff, you could start there. Bryce Fry was the one that suggested taking it all out. And he said that way you can spray it and get rid of the Bermuda. the plan is to plant, I think, about 15 different varieties of trees in there, figs, all kinds of nut trees and different fruit trees that grow well here. And to use a drip irrigation system instead of the current practice that we do. We have all manual valves, and what they do is they go open the valve and they let it run and run and run and run, and it just kind of floods the area, to get it down into the depth that you need it. So the plan is, when we take those trees out, is to redo the irrigation system and use emitters. Like you had talked about earlier, 3 7-gallon emitters per tree is normally what goes with a new planted tree. So that's 21 gallons an hour, versus, watering all of that. So it'd be a good water savings too, I think.
So what was the consensus of council?
Mayor,
Well, we're waiting to bring it back.
I don't think there was a consensus. I know the concern, and I shared with Brad today, my concern is doing much there right now when we're still waiting, that road has to be put in, and what impact that's going to have when, Ramona Hafen passes and we go in and take down, and we've equipment in there and getting what's our impact, because that sits, 4 or 5 feet above the grade of that road. So just kind of concerned about getting too crazy in there and then ruining what we went in and did.
I would think that we would hold back from the road right away.
well, we could
On any of the new
grade
stuff.
it, Mayor. I mean, I'm not opposed. I just wanted to, I think the idea is sound is, look, let's go in and do this right. But I think it'd be good for everybody's sake to have that plan so we all understand it, maybe even something that we put up showing a conceptual design of it so the residents understand. I love the idea of it, pomegranate and everything that would, everything
I
that
mean,
would
everything
grow.
Brad's talked about, it's a great idea.
But we could shoot that grade,
presentation.
bring it down, bring it
Yeah,
down
we
to,
can grade.
bring it down to the grade that needs to happen and get the irrigation and all that. But I think the fear of all of us is if the residents don't understand it well, you think power rates get, wait till we tear down the community orchard and
Well, and I think the understanding was, we didn't understand there was a replacement going to go on. It was just, they want to take out all the trees. That was, and I know that was what was, Wendell was quite concerned that he'd heard, and he heard it from you. No.
we could have the council out there. Think of the picture with all of us with chainsaw.
I know. And he asked me what was discussed, and I said, well, we tabled it, and said we'd bring it back for discussion because we didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Is there a plan, a written plan?
I have scratches from the meeting, but I put some ideas together. It could be a really beautiful place that would invite people in and still provide the same or better quality fruit production and nut production that we have now in Garden. But I mean, it could be a beautiful place where people want to go.
I think we
and
need to
enjoy.
be able to demonstrate that. What's more than just a sketch. It's almost, it'd be nice to have a professionally prepared plan, a long-range plan that spelled out the species and spacing and where the future road is. I've heard about your crayon drawings.
And part of that would also be include the Veterans Garden in that.
Sure, absolutely. And that's what I'm thinking is, if we had a plan that we can post on the webpage, that we can put a copy of it out in the lobby, that we can. So when people call, council can say, look, here it is, email a PDF to them and say, this is what the plan is. And then we would can approve that plan and then facilitate the construction.
I've researched the internet and found some.
Coming soon,
Sure,
something right there.
absolutely. Put a sign up
I
there.
think it'd be perfect, because it'll be awesome. Again, it'll be.
Is it something that's in our budget? Is it
Yes.
on your radar to be in our budget?
Well, it's in our impact fee study, and we have included in our budget.
Yeah, it'll some
Mhm.
budget retreat.
Okay, was Bryce's suggestion for taking all the trees out at the same time?
Ye-
I get it was to treat the Bermuda grass, but is that?
It was to his feeling was that unless you sprayed it, you wouldn't be able to get rid of the Bermuda grass because it's so, invasive. And that's
Right.
kind of was his idea to do
So
that.
some of the new species that we're wanting to put in, will they not grow if the Bermuda grass is there?
I don't think it'll prevent it from growing, but what we wanted to do is get rid of the Bermuda grass and then put a mulch over it, like a wood mulch, and just kind of use that for the landscape instead of grass.
Okay.
It's easier to maintain. You don't have to mow it. It doesn't take water away from the trees. It actually conserves the water by keeping the ground cooler and the moisture in the ground.
I like the ideas. I want to see the graphic image that we can show the residents.
I did some research on the internet and I just have some concepts, but I'll bring those to another meeting if you like, because I haven't had a chance to share them with Brock.
And bring them to the
Discuss
budget,
it.
Yeah.
budget retreat for sure.
All right.
Cool.
Okay. That's really all I have for report, unless you have something for me.
Are we still locking the bathrooms?
They're on automatic locks, and some of the parks where we have 4 bathrooms, we only open 2, and open those up during events and things. So we have the 4.
And they automatically lock?
They're supposed to. I can't say they lock every time, but they're all set to lock at 10 or 8 o'clock, depending on, if it's a ball field, it's later, but
Seen any additional vandalism?
not in the bathrooms, but we've seen a lot of graffiti and stuff like that.
Where's the graffiti?
They did the tunnel on the trail. They've done the bridge again. And that's all removed now. I mean, we get it pretty fast. They've breaking things. Graffiti in the bathrooms at Canyon View after school. We have cameras so we can, we can identify who they are. But when they go in the bathrooms and do things, sometimes it's kind of hard to figure out which person did that, when you've got people coming out all day and night.
Yeah.
Haven't had any for 2 weeks though. I don't know. It just stopped 2 weeks ago. So hopefully that's a trend.
Brad, just one question back to your on the sycamore trees down Santa Clara Drive, do we,
Yes.
those are on private property, most of them, not all of them, but do we trim those? Do we have because you get these major windstorms and you get a lot of those dead branches that come down, others. Would there be any benefit to or maybe we already do it in a maintenance plan to where?
We have a maintenance plan for them. We did 11 trees this year
Okay.
and we came through and had them fertilized and, and the dead limbs removed, and I think we removed 1 this year. Yeah, we're trying to keep them going, but some of them are kind of in between, the sidewalk and the right of way, and some of them are in private property, and, so we just take care of them. There's 17 of them that are on the state historic list. So we try to take, really good care of those. Some of them are like the one across from the old gas station here. That one's appraised at $33,000. The one in front of Kitty Jones at 3131 Santa Clara Drive was appraised at $39,000. So there is some value and they're worth protecting.
Wow.
Good to know.
Trees.
The price of lumber, I don't know. That's pretty cheap. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Who's over there? Christelle.
She won't talk. She's shy. She's been very busy though.
How's my State of the City video? Good to know. Did you guys all get that invitation to the State of the City luncheon?
Thank you.
Dustin, go.
I finally have contract signed for the curb gutter and sidewalk portion of on Arrowhead Trail that the homeowners are going to pay for. So when the crew gets time, they're going to get back down on that. Hopefully get that wrapped up. I've got well number 7 pulled right now to put some new bowls in for preventative maintenance so that hopefully we get 2 more run seasons out of it. We had some work done up on Pioneer Parkway and Rachel Drive at the traffic signal. The cameras were about 10 years out of date and parts no longer available, and we switched to a radar system. And we've had some in-house staff with the company that we hired, learning how to program and address certain problems. And as if we have a power blink and they don't come back on and things like that. We've ordered all new LED lights for every signal in town. We just have been replacing one as it goes out, and they all just need gone through. We're doing all the handicap pedestrian walk signs also. They're all faded and half working. And so we've been putting a lot of work into getting our traffic signals up to date. The public works crew's been crack sealing nearly every day. We're looking to do a spring pavement maintenance program, probably looking at doing a chip seal on a lot of our major arterial and collector roads. We're going to do a bid with Ivan City to hopefully get the lowest square footage price with their square footage and ours put together. We should hopefully get a cheaper price. I've been meeting with Sunrise Engineering about every other week on updating all our master plans, wastewater, stormwater, and water. I had a pre-construction meeting with Desert Hills to start Solis subdivision. So you might see some equipment up there any day now. I've had the engineer with Utopia in my office at least once a week on questions about zoning and new developments and easements and things like that. So
Dustin, do they come to TRC or are they invited? Is that
Not to
something we're
my
going to
knowledge, they're
start
not.
doing?
Well, we can, yeah. I mean, I know the discussion there is just to make sure what's coming in, to make sure they get conduit in the ground.
At least,
We could-
when appropriate, when a new development's coming in,
Yeah.
that they're giving the heads up.
And that's what he's been contacting me about, and everything right now that's in preliminary. I've even showed him like Brent Ence's property, Kent's, every potential development that could be coming. So
Okay.
it's been good. They seem to be really, really sharp in their design phase. That's all I have. You have any questions for me?
Once that's in the ground, it'll start showing up on blue stakes, right?
Yeah.
Do we blue stake that for them or do they have their own people?
They haven't said. I'm sure they'll have their own people. It wouldn't be us, like TDS and Dominion and CenturyLink.
Okay. Questions for Dustin? Thank you. Scott?
Well, so far this year in the building department, we're at 61 new home permits. We've got a couple in plan review process and then 14 pending, waiting on payment from people to come pick them up and pay. So various permits, 15 roof and solar permits, 10 pool permits. There's been some commercial, some awning permits, things like that. Currently have 360 active building permits. And within the last month, there's been over 450 building and stormwater inspections conducted by the building department, myself, and the help of Garrison down there and Public Works for the stormwater. So it came up about 150 then from the month prior. So of course, you know what Jim's been talking about in the zoning department with all the ordinances, things that he's been updating, but the big one's been this efficiently landscaping, one that we talked about tonight. And then I know that he's working with Desert Village, getting phase 3 completed. And I just wanted to throw out there, don't forget about Marv Wilson, with the time that he's volunteered so many years for our planning commission, and that's on the 9th. Is it the 9th or 10th? 10th.
Yeah.
So that'll be it for him. And then I did have the first meeting with a handful of employees that were selected by their directors on redoing our policy. So that's moving forward. And we're trying to get out to all the other members to be involved if they had any ideas or they wanted some input. So everybody in the city could be involved in. So one way or another.
Scott, would you kind of coordinate with Christelle on new development for that video presentation? Just
Sure.
so the number, and then if you can get me a summary of as I think it's on the 23rd,
Yes.
where we're at building permit wise, and is something to include in that mayor's report. New stuff that's about,
Nice, that nice spiel you gave at the summit, you're gonna do that again?
yeah, expanded version.
Oh. That was an
Yeah.
excellent job.
Yeah. I've got to take that 5-minute video and turn it into 40 minutes.
Jim, would you give the mayor a hand? Does anybody else have any questions for me?
Top of the tree down.
We've been working been very busy in the building department, and it's great to have Jim and Cody. They've been doing an excellent job. Great addition to the city.
Thanks, Scott.
Appreciate you cleaned up for the meeting.
It took me a minute to put my shirt on, but the time was spent on my hair.
Going downhill fast.
All right, I'm just gonna go into Selena, Fred and I attended an assessors meeting today, went over some of them. Some of the stuff that they need or the pertinent information from our permitting. But more importantly, we were able to meet with Brady Erdley with City Inspect. And we're going to work on fine tuning our system. I know she started here and maybe she's kind of put us on the back burner, and our commercial end is picked up. And that's where City Inspect in Santa Clara is kind of dropping off. So we're going to fine tune that. With that aside, I've got some fun facts. Won't take long, but here we go. What is the biggest building in Washington County, commercial?
One of the distribution buildings.
Yeah, it's right there. Walmart's over 1 million square feet, Family Dollar, but IHC with the new additions is shortly behind. And one more, I'm not going to bore you to tears, but what is the largest residential home in Washington County?
And Shakespeare.
Well, that was surprisingly, that's top 3. He just this year. It's 24,000 square feet in Washington. Is to that was Warren Jeff's home. When it was a home, it was 42,000 square feet. It's now a bed and breakfast. So,
Wow.
Santa Clara resident owns that, not me.
Owned locally.
one more fact, this one's just for Ben, but you can fit 1.5 fluid ounces in a half long.
Love volume. Pi R squared.
Oh,
Wow.
I love it.
I don't have anything to add this evening. You've heard from me, but I think we should call that Deep Thoughts by Cody.
I think we should play a game. They bring some questions for the city. We get a buzz in. Loser has to go do backyard landscape inspection.
Okay, Ben, I've got some trivia for you.
Oh, no.
I want you to
Got it
tell me
started.
what a group of crows are called. Now, this is serious trivia.
I've heard this, but I
I've
can't
heard
remember what it is.
It's,
Like
I'm assuming it's not a flock.
It's not a flock. It's a murder of crows.
Murder of crows.
Yeah. In the olden days, as the dark ages, the crow represented death, and when they showed up, it was a murder.
There you
That's the
go.
bird.
On that note, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Cody, we've got a home.